Introduction. 2 Years of Transformation. June 19, 1944. The Pacific Ocean west of the Mariana Islands witnesses the most lopsided aerial battle in naval history. What the Japanese call the Battle of the Philippine Sea, American pilots will remember simply as the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot. 2.5 years after Pearl Harbor, the balance of power has shifted dramatically. Task Force 58, commanded by Vice Admiral Mark Mitcher, steams with 15 aircraft carriers carrying over 900 aircraft. Against them, the Imperial Japanese Navy commits its remaining carrier strength in a desperate gamble to stop the American advance toward the Japanese homeland. What happens this day will shatter Japan's naval aviation forever. Part 1. The Opposing Forces. American Power. Task Force 58. Task Force 58 represents the most powerful naval force ever assembled. 15 carriers include 6 Essex-class vessels displacing 27,000 tons each, with reinforced flight decks designed to operate heavier aircraft. American designers prioritized durability and damage control over pure speed, accepting reduced aircraft capacity in exchange for enhanced survivability. The carriers operate in task groups, each protected by battleships, cruisers, and destroyers. Coordination between ships reaches unprecedented levels through improved communications and radar systems. The entire force operates as an integrated weapon system rather than independent ships. The F6F Hellcat, purpose-built dominance. The Grumman F6F Hellcat entered service in late 1943 as a direct response to combat experience against the Zero. Engineers designed the aircraft specifically to counter Japanese fighters using lessons from captured specimens and pilot debriefings. Specifications. Weight: 12,000 pounds fully loaded engine, Pratt & Whitney R2800 double wasp, 2,000 horsepower top speed, 380 miles per hour climb rate, 3,500 feet per minute armament, 6.50 caliber Browning machine guns with 400 rounds each armor, 212 pounds of steel plate protecting pilot, oil cooler, and oil tank fuel tanks. Self-sealing to prevent catastrophic fires. The Hellcat's design philosophy prioritized pilot survival. Armor surrounded the cockpit, seat back, headrest, and floor panels. The bulletproof windscreen consisted of 1.5-inch laminated glass capable of stopping 7.7mm rounds at point-blank range. Self-sealing fuel tanks used multiple rubber layers that expanded when punctured. Test flights demonstrated the Hellcat could absorb multiple 20mm cannon hits while remaining controllable. This durability provided psychological confidence. Pilots knew their aircraft could survive encounters that would destroy enemy fighters. Japanese desperation. Operation Ago. Admiral Jisaburo Ozawa commanded Japan's mobile fleet with 9 carriers. On paper, this force embarked approximately 430 aircraft. However, the reality was far grimmer than numbers suggested. The Japanese pilots were not the elite aviators of 1941 to 1942. Most had completed abbreviated training programs, just weeks or months compared to the 3 years previously required. Many had fewer than 100 hours total flight time. Some had never fired weapons at moving aerial targets before entering combat. Fuel shortages eliminated advanced combat training. Ammunition scarcity limited gunnery practice to static ground targets. Most critically, carrier landing practice averaged just 5 successful traps before operational deployment. The contrast was stark. While a few veterans like Lieutenant Junior Grade Toshio Yamamoto possessed over 600 combat hours, most pilots were barely competent to fly their aircraft, much less fight in them. The Zero's decline. The Mitsubishi A6M0 had dominated early war encounters through exceptional maneuverability and range. However, its design compromised protection for performance. The Zero lacked armor plating, self-sealing fuel tanks, and robust construction. What made it nimble also made it fatally vulnerable. By 1944, these weaknesses proved catastrophic against the heavily armed and armored Hellcat. Zero specifications. Engine, Seiki 21, 1,130 horsepower climb rate, 2,600 feet per minute armament, 2 20mm cannon, 60 rounds each, 2 7.7mm machine guns protection, no armor, no self-sealing tanks. The 20mm cannons theoretically provided hitting power, but low muzzle velocity created significant trajectory drop. Limited ammunition forced pilots to conserve fire. The 7.7mm machine guns lacked stopping power against armored American fighters. Part 2. The Training Gap. American Preparation. By 1944, the American Naval Aviation training program had become a massive industrial system. The program produced 10,000 new aviators annually through standardized curriculum developed from operational analysis. American pilots averaged over 525 hours flight time before joining operational squadrons. Training included 150 hours in combat aircraft types, extensive gunnery training with camera guns recording accuracy, energy management and tactical maneuvering, section and division tactics emphasizing teamwork, deflection, shooting against towed targets, night flying and instrument procedures, simulated combat against dissimilar aircraft. Operational training units provided realistic combat preparation using experienced instructors rotating from frontline squadrons. This system ensured consistent quality. Each pilot represented an interchangeable component rather than an irreplaceable individual. Japanese collapse. The contrast was devastating. By late 1944, Japanese replacement pilots graduated with just 40 to 100 hours flying time. The fuel shortage forced reliance on ground instruction and limited hours in obsolete trainers. Most pilots never fired weapons at aerial targets before combat. Formation flying emphasized parade precision over tactical flexibility. The abbreviated program eliminated aerobatics, instrument flying, and night operations, all considered essential in the pre-war curriculum. The qualitative difference magnified aircraft performance disparities. Even if Japan could produce aircraft equal to the Hellcat, inadequately trained pilots couldn't employ them effectively. Part 3. The Technological Edge Radar, the Invisible Advantage. American technological superiority extended far beyond aircraft performance. Radar systems provided decisive tactical advantages through early warning and fighter direction. The SK air search radar detected aircraft at 100 miles range. The SM height-finding radar determined altitude within 500 feet accuracy. This information fed into combat information centers where trained officers plotted all contacts on vertical display boards. Fighter director officers vectored defending fighters using VHF radio equipment, providing clear communications. The integrated system transformed aerial defense from reactive scrambling to coordinated interception with altitude and positional advantages. Each carrier maintained a combat information center with trained officers tracking airborne contacts. Radio communications linked directors with fighters, providing real-time tactical guidance throughout engagements. This centralized control maximized defensive efficiency by concentrating fighters at optimal intercept points. Japanese carriers lacked effective radar. The Type 21 air search radar on some vessels provided only 60 miles detection range with poor reliability and frequent false contacts. Without height-finding capability or integrated fighter direction, Japanese combat air patrols operated independently using pre-war doctrine. Communications superiority. The Hellcat's robust radio equipment enabled clear communications despite electromagnetic interference from dozens of simultaneous transmissions. Japanese pilots struggled with inferior radio systems producing static and feedback. Many disabled their radios entirely, relying on hand signals and pre-briefed formations. This communication breakdown compounded tactical disadvantages as Japanese formations fragmented under coordinated American attacks. Part 4. June 19, the morning massacre, first wave, 7:30 a.m. At 7:30 a.m., Lieutenant Warrant Officer Sakio Komatsu adjusted his flight suit in the ready room aboard carrier Taiho. The morning briefing emphasized maximum strike force against American carriers detected east of Guam. The first Japanese wave, 69 aircraft, launched toward Task Force 58. The formation included Zero fighters, dive bombers, and torpedo planes approaching at 24,000 feet. Many pilots had completed training just months earlier with minimal combat experience. Radar detection. American radar operators aboard USS Yorktown detected the incoming formation at 150 miles distance, providing over 20 minutes advance warning. Fighter director officers immediately began vectoring combat air patrol fighters toward specific intercept coordinates. This technological advantage transformed defense from reactive scrambling to coordinated interception with altitude and positional advantages already secured. First contact, 9:15 a.m. Commander David McCampbell led Fighting Squadron 15's 1st Division from USS Essex, climbing toward the incoming raid. His 12 Hellcats maintained tight formation while following radar vectors toward assigned targets. Each American pilot averaged over 300 hours flight time with extensive gunnery and tactical training. They were confident, well-rested, and flying superior aircraft. The Japanese formation encountered the first Hellcats at 9:15 a.m., approximately 90 miles west of Guam. The American fighters attacked from above and behind, using altitude advantage for high-speed diving passes. Slaughter begins. Ensign Hiroshi Tanaka broke left, attempting to force an overshoot, but the Hellcat followed his turn with surprising agility. The American fighter's superior power allowed sustained turning at speeds where the Zero's controls became heavy and unresponsive. Multiple .50 caliber rounds struck Tanaka's aircraft, severing control cables and puncturing fuel tanks that immediately ignited. The Zero's lack of armor proved catastrophic as armor-piercing incendiary rounds penetrated thin aluminum structure. Tanaka's aircraft exploded when flames reached wing tanks. This shocking destruction contradicted everything Japanese pilots believed about their aircraft superiority. The psychological impact spread through the formation as pilots witnessed fighters destroyed with apparent ease. Tactical dominance. McCampbell's division executed coordinated slashing attacks using superior speed and firepower. The Hellcats dove from 28,000 feet, reaching 450 miles per hour before zooming back to altitude. This energy-based approach negated the Zero's maneuverability advantage while exploiting its inferior high-speed handling. Japanese pilots attempted traditional turning engagements but couldn't force Americans into sustained dogfights. Each Hellcat pilot maintained strict energy discipline, refusing low-speed turning battles where Zeros excelled. The Americans demonstrated remarkable teamwork, wingmen protecting leaders during attack runs while maintaining mutual support throughout engagements. This coordination reflected extensive multi-aircraft tactical training emphasizing section and division tactics over individual combat. First blood. The first engagement ended with severe Japanese losses, 12 Zeros destroyed within 8 minutes. American pilots observed characteristics contradicting intelligence estimates. Poor gunnery with most bursts passing behind targets, predictable evasive maneuvers suggesting inadequate training, confusion and hesitation when opportunities presented, abandonment of advantageous positions through apparent inexperience. Only 27 aircraft from the first wave returned to their carriers, many bearing significant battle damage. Part 5, Waves 2 and 3. Second wave, 8:56 a.m. launch. Admiral Ozawa launched his second wave at 8:56 a.m. 128 aircraft comprising 48 Zero fighters, 53 Judy dive bombers, and 27 Jill torpedo bombers. The massive strike was tasked with overwhelming American defenses through sheer numbers. However, inexperienced pilots struggled with basic navigation. Formations fragmented during the long approach flight. Several groups became lost entirely, wandering aimlessly while consuming precious fuel before finding targets. Systematic destruction. Lieutenant Alexander Vrashew from Fighting Squadron 16 aboard Lexington intercepted the second wave's leading element 60 miles from the task force. His section of 4 Hellcats engaged 12 enemy aircraft with devastating effectiveness, shooting down 6 planes in 8 minutes. Vrashew expended only 360 rounds of his 2,400-round ammunition load. The concentrated firepower of .50 caliber guns proved overwhelming. Short bursts produced immediate catastrophic damage with wings separating, engines exploding, and fuel tanks igniting. The technological disparity became increasingly apparent. Hellcats absorbed multiple hits from Japanese 7.7mm machine guns without significant damage, while their own weapons destroyed Zeros with minimal ammunition expenditure. American pilots reported enemy aircraft disintegrating under concentrated fire, often exploding after just 2 or 3 seconds of accurate shooting. Fighter direction in action. Radar-directed fighter control enabled efficient vector management as American fighters intercepted multiple incoming waves. Fighter direction officers maintained complete tactical awareness through radar tracking and pilot reports, positioning fresh fighters at optimal intercept points. This systematic defense prevented Japanese formations from coordinating mass attacks. Individual groups arrived piecemeal, encountering concentrated Hellcat formations positioned for maximum advantage. The raiders suffered progressive attrition before reaching effective attack range. Minimal damage. The second wave's attack on Task Force 58 achieved minimal results. Survivors penetrated the fighter screen in scattered groups. Anti-aircraft fire from screening destroyers and cruisers created dense barrage patterns that further dispersed attacking formations. The few Japanese aircraft reaching carriers encountered concentrated defensive fire from multiple vessels firing proximity-fused shells. Only one torpedo bomber successfully launched its weapon, which USS Indiana easily evaded through timely maneuvering. Barely 1/3 of the 128 aircraft survived to return. Third wave, McCampbell's rampage. Commander McCampbell's second sortie encountered the third Japanese wave at 11 a.m. His formation of 12 Hellcats engaged over 40 enemy aircraft in a running battle lasting 20 minutes. McCampbell personally destroyed 7 Japanese planes while his wingman, Lieutenant Roy Rushing, accounted for 4 additional victories. The engagement demonstrated cumulative American training advantages as experienced pilots exploited every enemy mistake. Japanese formations dissolved into individual aircraft maneuvering defensively, abandoning attack missions to survive overwhelming fighter opposition. Part 6. The destruction assessed Japanese perspective. Lieutenant Commander Kenji Suzuki observed the third wave's destruction from his damaged Zero struggling back toward the fleet. His aircraft bore multiple .50 caliber holes through wings and fuselage, with one elevator cable severed and the engine running rough. The severe losses exceeded anything experienced in previous carrier battles, including Midway. At Midway, at least some aircraft successfully attacked enemy ships. Today's operations achieved virtually nothing while losing dozens of aircraft and irreplaceable pilots. The intelligence failure became apparent. Previous estimates based on captured F4F Wildcat suggested American fighters remained inferior to updated Zero variants in all parameters except diving speed. The Hellcat's ability to outclimb, outturn at high speed, and absorb tremendous damage contradicted every assumption underlying Japanese tactical planning. Mounting casualties. Aboard Taiho, Admiral Ozawa received fragmentary reports indicating catastrophic losses among all 3 attack waves. Surviving pilots described overwhelming fighter opposition with American aircraft appearing at every altitude and direction. Air operations officers tallied mounting casualties as aircraft failed to return. First wave, 69 launched, 27 returned, 42 lost. Second wave, 128 launched, 31 returned, 97 lost. Third wave, 47 launched, 7 returned, 40 lost. These losses represented not just aircraft but irreplaceable pilots whose training required years of peacetime development. Psychological collapse. Returning pilots exhibited signs of severe psychological trauma. Young aviators who graduated training just weeks earlier described terror and helplessness facing an enemy that seemed invulnerable. Their 7.7mm machine guns appeared completely ineffective while American .50s tore aircraft apart with devastating efficiency. The myth of the Zero's invincibility shattered completely as pilots witnessed squadron mates destroyed without opportunity for effective resistance. Veteran pilots like Yamamoto struggled to comprehend the reversal. Tactical methods developed through successful campaigns in China, Southeast Asia, and the Pacific no longer functioned. Years of combat experience became meaningless when the enemy refused engagement on terms where Japanese pilots excelled. The human cost. Morale aboard Japanese carriers plummeted as maintenance crews counted empty parking spots. Flight decks designed to operate 75 aircraft each now held scattered remnants of once powerful air groups. Mechanics and armorers who prepared aircraft for morning strikes stood idle with no machines to service. The human dimension of defeat became apparent as friends and squadron mates failed to return from what promised to be decisive victory. Part 7. The Fourth Wave and American Counterstrike Final Desperation. Despite mounting evidence of catastrophic losses, Admiral Ozawa launched a fourth wave, 82 aircraft hoping to achieve some damage before withdrawing westward. These aircraft encountered even more intense fighter opposition as American carriers recovered, refueled, and relaunched combat air patrols. The systematic destruction continued with mechanical precision. Hellcats positioned at multiple altitudes engaged each incoming group. The fourth wave suffered similar devastation to its predecessors. American offensive. By 2:30 p.m., American search aircraft located the Japanese fleet 275 miles west-northwest of Task Force 58. Admiral Mitchell launched a maximum effort strike of 216 aircraft despite extreme range requiring careful fuel management. The American strike included 85 Hellcat fighters, demonstrating offensive capability beyond pure fleet defense. While Japanese carriers struggled to maintain minimal defensive patrols with surviving aircraft, American carriers surged overwhelming offensive power. Defenseless carriers. The American strike found Japanese carriers virtually defenseless. Only 35 operational fighters remained from over 400 aircraft available that morning. Hellcat fighters swept aside token opposition while dive bombers and torpedo planes attacked without significant interference. Carrier Hyo sank after multiple torpedo hits. Zuikaku and Chiyoda suffered severe damage from bomb strikes. Japanese anti-aircraft fire proved ineffective against coordinated attacks pressed home by experienced American pilots. Night recovery. The return flight occurred after sunset, creating navigation challenges as pilots struggled to locate carriers in darkness. Admiral Mitchell made an unprecedented decision: illuminate his carriers despite submarine threats, turning on searchlights and deck lights to guide returning aircraft. This calculated risk prioritized aircrew recovery over ship security, demonstrating American confidence in their tactical position. Despite losing 80 aircraft to fuel exhaustion and night landing accidents, personnel recovery reached 85% as destroyers rescued pilots from the water. Part 8. Submarine strikes. Taiho's loss. The aerial disaster was compounded by submarine attacks. USS Albacore torpedoed Taiho, Japan's newest and most advanced carrier with an armored flight deck, early on June 19. The single torpedo hit caused catastrophic vapor explosions hours later, sinking the ship. Shokaku's end. USS Kavala torpedoed Shokaku, veteran of Pearl Harbor and every major carrier battle except Midway, while she was refueling aircraft. Multiple torpedo hits sent her to the bottom. These losses eliminated not just ships but the institutional experience of their crews, who could not be replaced before war's end. Part 9. The final tally. Japanese devastation. The final count revealed catastrophic Japanese defeat. Aircraft lost, 445, 395 carrier-based, 50 land-based, pilots killed, over 400, including instructors recalled from training units. Carriers sunk. Taiho, Shokaku, Hyo carriers damaged, Zuikaku, Chiyoda, and others. American losses. American casualties were remarkably light. Aircraft lost, 123, 80 to operational accidents, 43 to enemy action. Ships lost, none. Ships damaged, minor damage to a few vessels. Exchange ratio. The loss ratio exceeded 10-1 in favor of American forces. More significantly, Japan lost over 400 pilots, the last reservoir of experienced naval aviators. These men represented years of training investment that could not be replaced through abbreviated programs. Part 10. Why the Turkey Shoot happened. Design philosophy differences. The Hellcat's success validated design philosophy prioritizing pilot survival over pure performance. American engineers accepted weight penalties for armor and self-sealing tanks, creating aircraft that survived damage, destroying Zeros instantly. The powerful R-2800 engine provided performance margins, allowing pilots to dictate engagement terms while avoiding situations where Zeros excelled. The massive firepower of 6.50 caliber guns overwhelmed Japanese aircraft structures designed for minimum weight rather than battle damage resistance. Training systems. The American training systems expansion demonstrated industrial-age warfare's triumph over craftsman tradition. While Japan struggled to train hundreds of replacement pilots using abbreviated programs, America trained thousands using systematic curriculum. The assembler line approach to pilot production achieved consistent quality through standardized instruction and extensive flying hours. Each American pilot represented an interchangeable component rather than an irreplaceable individual. Technology integration. The radar-directed fighter control system exemplified technological force multiplication beyond individual aircraft capabilities. The ability to position fighters optimally before visual contact negated Japanese tactical surprise while maximizing defensive efficiency. This systematic approach transformed carrier task forces from vulnerable targets to nearly impregnable fortresses against conventional air attack. The integration of sensors, communications, and command functions created synergistic capabilities exceeding the sum of individual components. Doctrine failure. Japanese naval doctrine failed to adapt to changing circumstances. The emphasis on offensive operations using carrier aviation to achieve decisive victory through single engagements became irrelevant against an enemy refusing such terms. American forces accepted gradual attrition through sustained operations rather than seeking climactic battles. This operational patience combined with industrial superiority guaranteed eventual victory regardless of individual engagement outcomes. Part 11. Strategic implications. End of Japanese carrier aviation. Admiral Ozawa's report to Combined Fleet Headquarters acknowledged the effective destruction of Japanese carrier aviation as an offensive force. The surviving carriers possessed ships and aircraft but lacked trained pilots capable of conducting effective operations. The mobile fleet that sortied expecting decisive victory returned having demonstrated only American aerial supremacy. Japan's naval aviation would never recover from this disaster. American advance continues. The strategic consequences extended beyond immediate military defeat. American forces continued advancing toward Japan without meaningful aerial opposition from the Imperial Navy. The invasion of Saipan proceeded without interference. The island's airfield soon hosted B-29 bombers, bringing strategic bombing to Japan's home islands. The carrier battle intended to prevent this outcome instead confirmed American ability to project power wherever national strategy required. Path to kamikaze. The psychological impact extended to recognition that spiritual determination could not overcome material inferiority. Japan's military leadership confronted the reality that their nation lacked resources to compete with American production regardless of tactical innovation. The decision to continue fighting despite mathematical certainty of defeat reflected cultural inability to accept surrender. The kamikaze phenomenon would emerge from this cognitive dissonance, accepting defeat's inevitability while refusing its implications. Part 12. The Hellcat's Legacy Combat Record. The F6F Hellcat achieved the highest kill ratio of any American fighter, 5,223 confirmed victories against 270 losses in aerial combat, a 19-to-1 ratio. This exceeded every other aircraft type while accounting for 75% of all Navy aerial victories despite entering service halfway through the war. Design validation. The Hellcat validated the design philosophy prioritizing pilot survival and firepower over pure performance metrics. Veterans consistently praised the Hellcats for giving flight characteristics and ability to absorb battle damage while maintaining combat effectiveness. Production numbers. American industrial superiority proved decisive through quantity and quality advantages. The statistics revealed the hopelessness of Japan's position. America produced 96,000 aircraft in 1944. Japan managed only 28,000 despite total mobilization Hellcat production, 12,275 units total post-war service. The Hellcat continued serving through the Korean War, adapted for ground attack missions exploiting its robust construction and heavy armament. The basic design proved sound enough for extended service even as jet aircraft emerged. Part 13. Personal Accounts. Commander David McCampbell. McCampbell became the Navy's top ace with 34 victories, including 7 on June 19 alone. His calm leadership and precise gunnery exemplified the best of American naval aviation. He received the Medal of Honor for his actions during the battle. Lieutenant Alexander Vrashu. Vrashu shot down 6 Japanese aircraft in 8 minutes during the second wave, using only 360 rounds. His efficient gunnery demonstrated the effectiveness of American training. He would finish the war as the Navy's 4th-ranking ace with 19 victories. Japanese survivors. Lieutenant Commander Kenji Suzuki survived the battle but never flew again. His damaged Zero barely made it back to the carrier. In post-war interviews, he described the horror of watching helplessly as American fighters systematically destroyed his formation. Many Japanese pilots suffered psychological trauma from the encounter. Young aviators who entered the battle with dreams of glory returned broken by the reality of their obsolete aircraft and inadequate training against a superior enemy. Part 14. Industrial War Production Comparison. The battle demonstrated that modern warfare rewards industrial capability and scientific advancement over warrior tradition and spiritual determination. 1944 Annual Production. U.S. aircraft, 96,000 Japanese aircraft, 28,000 U.S. pilots trained, 30,000 plus Japanese pilots trained, 5,000 replacement capacity. Each American loss could be replaced multiple times while Japanese losses became permanent degradation of combat capability. The ability to produce thousands of aircraft monthly while training pilots to operate them effectively created insurmountable numerical superiority. Quality and quantity. America achieved both quality and quantity advantages. The Hellcat was not just more numerous but superior to the Zero in every combat-relevant parameter. American pilots were not just more numerous but better trained and more experienced. This combination proved overwhelming. Part 15. The Turkey Shoot's place in history. Turning point. The Battle of the Philippine Sea represents the culmination of American naval aviation development from Pearl Harbor's disaster through methodical construction of overwhelming superiority. The carrier task forces Japan attacked in 1941 hoping to eliminate American Pacific presence returned multiplied tenfold with superior aircraft, pilots, and tactical doctrine. The transformation from desperate defense to offensive supremacy occurred through systematic application of industrial resources, technological innovation, and operational analysis. One-sided victory. The Turkey Shoot stands as history's most lopsided carrier battle. The 10-to-1 loss ratio exceeded even Midway's decisive American victory. More importantly, the battle eliminated Japan's last reservoir of trained carrier pilots. After June 19, 1944, Japan's carriers became floating targets incapable of meaningful offensive operations. The Imperial Navy that dominated the Pacific in 1942 became irrelevant by mid-1944. Lessons learned. The battle proved several enduring principles. Technology matters. Superior aircraft design incorporating combat lessons created decisive advantages. Training wins wars. Systematic training programs producing competent pilots in quantity overwhelmed elite opponents. Integration is key. Radar, communications, and fighter direction integrated into coordinated defensive system multiplied effectiveness. Industrial capacity decides. Production capability ultimately determines outcomes in modern warfare. Adaptation is essential. American forces learned from early defeats and adapted. Japan did not. Part 16. The Human Dimension. American pilots. American pilots who survived the battle described surreal experiences shooting down multiple enemy aircraft with minimal effort. Some felt sympathy for opponents flying obsolete aircraft with inadequate training. The mechanical efficiency of destroying Japanese aircraft left many pilots conflicted. This wasn't glorious aerial combat. It was systematic execution of overmatched opponents. The Turkey Shoot nickname captured both the one-sided nature and the discomfort some pilots felt about such easy victories. Japanese tragedy. Japanese survivors recounted horror watching squadron mates destroyed without opportunity for effective resistance. Young pilots who should have received years of training died in their first combat because Japan lacked fuel for proper training. The institutional knowledge accumulated through decades disappeared in a single day's combat. Pre-war naval aviators had been elite warriors whose skills required extensive development. Their wartime replacements were barely competent to fly their aircraft, much less fight in them. Survivor's guilt. Many Japanese pilots experienced severe survivor's guilt. They returned from missions where friends and squadron mates perished, knowing they survived partly through luck rather than skill. This psychological trauma would haunt them for decades. Conclusion. Democracy's arsenal. The Great Marianas Turkey Shoot demonstrated that industrial democracy, properly mobilized, could produce military superiority that traditional military virtues could not overcome. On the morning of June 19, 1944, American naval aviation achieved unquestioned supremacy over Japanese opponents. Months of preparation, training, and technological development culminated in hours of aerial combat that eliminated Japanese carrier aviation's offensive capability. The F6F Hellcat proved itself as the weapon transforming American carriers from vulnerable targets into dominant instruments of naval power. The pilots who flew these aircraft demonstrated that systematic training could produce competent aviators in quantity, overwhelming elite opponents through numerical and qualitative superiority. Japan's attempt to achieve decisive victory through conventional carrier aviation ended in catastrophic defeat. The Imperial Navy that dominated the Pacific in 1942 became incapable of meaningful offensive operations by June 1944. The battle stands as testament to democracy's ability to mobilize resources effectively against authoritarian aggression when national survival demands total commitment. Free peoples, united in purpose and armed with superior technology and training, proved capable of achieving total victory over opponents who relied on warrior tradition and spiritual determination. The morning of June 19, 1944, witnessed the destruction of Japanese naval aviation through systematic demonstration of American superiority. The transformation from Pearl Harbor's vulnerability to the Philippine Sea's dominance proved that freedom's arsenal, properly mobilized and directed, could defeat aggression regardless of initial advantages held by authoritarian opponents. The Turkey Shoot entered history as the decisive moment when American naval aviation achieved supremacy continuing through the Pacific War's conclusion. The battle proved that courage cannot overcome material disadvantage, that industrial capacity determines modern warfare's outcomes, and that free peoples defending their homes can achieve extraordinary results when facing existential threats.